Hi there, I'm Paul Kirtley and I have a show on YouTube called Ask Paul Kirtley where people send me all manner of questions about bushcraft, survival skills and outdoor life. And there are quite a few questions about equipment, and I've built up a bit of a reputation of not really wanting to answer questions about kit, or at least not answering too many questions about kit, particularly under the umbrella of bushcraft. But when we go outside, we all need some clothing and equipment, and I think it's important to talk about the right clothing. And one of the questions that keeps coming up is, what layers do you like using? And another question that keeps coming up is, what waterproof clothing do you use? And in particular, what clothing do you use in the woods that's waterproof and tough? And I think it's really important to talk to people about good layering and good waterproofs, because your clothing, particularly in temperatures where you need layers and you need waterproofs, typically the clothing there is your first line of defense against hypothermia, and it's important that you get it right. And I've seen people struggle in the outdoors because they haven't made good choices in clothing. And one of the first things you need to do if it's a bit cold, before you start thinking about what layer should I put on, should I be wearing a wool top or a Prima Loft jacket or anything else, is make sure you've got good base layers. And a good merino wool base layer these days is easy to get hold of, it's comfortable, and even for people who think of wool traditionally as being itchy and scratchy, merino wool, because it's fine, it's long fibers, it's very, very comfortable, and it doesn't smell. You can wear it for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and it won't smell. And just hanging it out to dry hanging it out to air in the air, just allowing some air to get through occasionally, is enough on a trip. I've worn merino wool for several weeks in a row and it literally does not smell. It might start to smell a little bit greasy if it starts to build up a lot, but it doesn't smell of BO like synthetic materials do, that, you know, the traditional smelly heli that stinks after a couple of hours of wearing it. Those synthetic wicking base layers have their place in high energy, high activity situations such as cross-country skiing perhaps, or a running race, you know, in the winter, a cross-country running race, those sorts of things. But generally, if you're out and about in the woods, hiking, canoeing, camping, in temperatures where you need to think about your layers, have a merino base layer. But what I've seen is some people, they wear that almost like a jumper. So they might wear a light merino and then a slightly heavier merino layer, and they'll wear them on the outside of their clothing. And the problem with that is that they don't make very robust clothes. So they get pulled, loops get pulled, holes get made in them. So if you don't need much more than the merino base layer, just have a light jacket or a light fleece that you can put on over the top. That's not going to weigh a lot, but it's going to protect the merino underneath. Or maybe a light cotton jacket or a light and people have talked about cotton with me in the past, and they think cotton's death cloth. It is if it's next to your skin, but if it's cold and dry, a cotton smock is a really good, very breathable yet windproof and protective outer layer. So in the far north, I'll wear a ventile smock, which is finely woven cotton, and we'll look at some other options in a second. But in wet conditions, you don't want any cotton really, even as an outer layer. Ventile you can get away with under some circumstances, and we'll talk about some options in a sec. But generally something that's more waterproof if you want something over the top of that to keep the water out. And again, we'll look at some options. But there are a multitude of options, and the midges have just come out a little bit here. And there's a multitude of options, but and by all means leave me a note of what you like and what works for you and this, that and the other. But I'm not interested in people responding to this saying you should do something else. What I'm sharing is what works for me. People have asked what works for me, people have asked what I use, and this is what works for me. But the general points I've made already, merino wool base layer, something to protect the merino wool, even if you don't need much more than that at the time, is important, because otherwise you'll ruin the merino wool. And then the next thing that's going to help keep you really warm is a hat. No use putting bulky warm garments on over the top of this if you don't have something on your head, because the blood vessels are always open to your head, and even if you're getting vasoconstriction elsewhere where your body's trying to conserve heat into your core and your hands start getting stiff and your feet start getting cold, the blood is still going to be going to your brain. The warm blood from your core is going to be going into your head, which is part of your core really, but then that heat is going to be lost. Hot air rises, it's going to go away from you, so putting a hat on makes a big difference as well. The old saying, if you've got cold feet, put on a hat, is true. It helps keep you warm, your whole body warm. I've got articles about hypothermia and avoiding heat loss and cold injuries on my blog, and if you look if you're watching this on YouTube, if you watch the information bar on the side, I will put links to all of those. And if you're on my blog watching this as a video blog or as a video piece, links underneath here that will link to all of those articles elsewhere on my blog. Okay, so what do I use? In colder climates, I have this relatively thin merino base layer, and you can get ones like this from Howie's, from Icebreaker, from various other manufacturers. I might put another merino over the top. So in the cold far north, I tend to wear a thin merino layer, and then I tend to wear this 200 gram. Now these are sold as these are frotte, are sold as a base layer, and you can wear this next to your skin, and they're super comfortable. And I do wear them like that sometimes, but I find in the real far north, in the real cold, I like to have a thin merino, and that works best for me. So a couple of thin layers of merino to start off with. Or sometimes in the UK, on colder winter nights, I'll wear this. And I typically have this any time of the year, just in a little stuff sack in my rucksack. Those of you that have watched my packing videos, you might have seen a little stuff sack where I say I've always got a merino base layer, I've always got a little pair of gloves, and I've always got a hat any time of year. So it's this and a hat and some gloves in a little stuff sack. And then even in the summer, if we have a particularly cold night for some reason, or in the spring or the autumn, if a chill comes down more than expected, I've got an extra warm layer. So that's something that I've typically got with me under any circumstances, and it's really good. I've even worn it in Africa in the evenings. It's been a super hot warm day. I've had a cotton shirt on, sitting around in the evening around camp. It starts to cool off. That has been it's like a light woolly, but you can put that on under the shirt, so the shirt protects it, and then you're nice and warm, and that works well. So a thin merino generally is a standard, and then having this with you as well at all times, so it's an additional thing in the winter, or it's just your main warm woolly that goes next to your skin in warmer climes. That's very, very good. One of my favourite garments is this Swazi fleece. It's the old style back 40 with the hood, and particularly with lighter fleeces, this is sort of a medium weight fleece I would call this, but I have some lighter weight fleeces as well. If I can get a fleece with an integrated hood, I like it, because this is an additional hat. So you'll find that I normally have one warm garment with me that has a hood on it. You don't want every warm garment to have a hood on it typically, but one of the fleeces that I've got, whether it's a light fleece underneath that comes with a hood, and then I can wear a heavier fleece over the top, or whether it's I've got a light fleece on under this, say, and then I can put this on over the top. So this combination I like. I have a lighter weight Berghaus fleece, and it's just your typical, it's like a 100 Polartec fleece that I wear a lot of the time when I'm working in the woods. I'll wear it over a cotton shirt, or I'll wear it over a merino shirt, whatever I typically want. I can tuck it in if I want to, and then over the top, I'm going to zoom out. This is a very low tech video that I'm making for you here, and also I apologize if the sound isn't as good as normal. I don't have an external microphone. I don't have a lavalier microphone. I've just got the camera mic because I'm changing clothes and there'll be lots of rustling, so I'm just relying on the camera microphone. So apologies if the sound isn't as good as you're used to those, but I'll step back far enough, and I've got contrasting trousers on. I've got some other Fjällräven trousers on. This really is low tech. I'm just going to bring that down slightly. There we go. Don't have a cameraman, don't have a camera crew, it's just me on my own. So I can tuck this back 40 in. Now unfortunately my understanding is that Swazi don't make these anymore, but regardless of the hood, I could have a light fleece with a hood on underneath that would serve the purpose, but this works very well as a layered system with a lighter fleece underneath. So I might have a merino and then I'm a light fleece and then this, or I can just wear my merino like I am now and then I've got this. So because Swazi don't make this anymore, I reserve this, I keep this for expeditions now because it's quite light, it's got a hood which you can't get anymore, and it's comfortable and it fits really well together with the Swazi tar anorak. So I've got a layering system here, light merino, possible light fleece, Polartec 100, just like a jumper, you know, those sorts that have a zip up the front, nothing else going on. You can buy them very cheaply, that sort of thing. That can tuck in my trousers as well if I want it to, or I can have it loose. And then this back 40, this doesn't have any elastication around the bottom, so it can hang loose if I want to ventilate, but equally I tuck it in and it keeps the warmth in here and it feels really nice and cozy, and it's got a hood. One of my garments typically has a hood. And I wear that, so that fits very well together with my Swazi tar. These are quite expensive, but they're super tough. This one is 7 or 8 years old, and it's been to Canada with me at least once a year, every year since 2010. Been on lots of trips in the UK. I wear it a lot for working in the woods because I can stand around in the pouring rain in this and I don't get wet. And when you're instructing, you tend often not to be quite as active as you. Certainly I'm not as active when I'm teaching as I am when I'm making a trip on my own, or even making a trip with customers, because we're in an environment where clients may be active doing bow drill, building shelters, but if it's cold and wet and windy, I'm well protected in this. So I like this for teaching in, but I also like it for expeditions. The weatherproofing is fantastic, double Velcro seals, really good hood on it, comes right up, and it integrates really well with the Swazi fleece that I like the hood on. It all fits together really well. So that is one of my favorite combinations in terms of layering. It keeps the wet out, it keeps the wind out, it keeps me warm, and I can layer it in a way that works very well in lots of different circumstances. This jacket's also very tough for working in the woods, which, you know, it's Gore-Tex, it's very breathable. It's certainly more breathable than the Ridgeline jackets, which look similar but are a lot cheaper, and it's still very durable. I reproof it regularly. It serves me very well. Also, again, I'm not a huge fan of taking waterproof trousers on and off. Now, I live in the UK where it does rain a fair amount, and when I'm teaching we can have a day with sunshine and showers, and I've got to be helping customers, I've got to be helping clients, and I don't want to be getting changed and unchanged, and I just want something I can wear all day. If it's wet, I've got this on. If it's not wet, maybe I'll take it off at some point. And if I wear this, I don't need to worry really about waterproof trousers, because this keeps me dry right down my core, everything. My legs might get a little bit wet, but because I'm wearing these Fjällräven trousers, the G1000 fabric, it repels water quite well to start off with, and it'll dry very quickly near a fire. So I find when I'm working out in the woods, this is my typical thing. Although, as I say, I don't wear this fleece anymore. I wear the Helikon-Tex fleece for working in the woods. It's the one you've seen me. Go back and look at episode 29, 28, 27 and 26 of Aspor Kirtley. Those end of the winter, cold parts of the spring, I was wearing that Helikon-Tex fleece that lots of people have asked me about lots of times. That's the fleece that I've worn a lot in my Aspor Kirtley videos that I've already answered questions about. That's my standard work fleece now, because it fits up well underneath this. Still, it's got a hood, but I can keep my Swazi for expeditions. So this, typically on a canoe trip in Canada, this is what I'm going to take with me, because it packs down small, it's tough. I can paddle in this jacket if I want to. It's good for paddling in as well, and it's good for around camp. So I only need to take one waterproof with me as well. So that's my, even though in and of itself it's relatively heavy compared to some more lightweight Gore-Tex jackets, I don't have to take a cag for paddling in and a jacket for wearing around camp. I've got one jacket that does everything for me. Right, next, a couple of other options. One of the things I think I've come to realise over the years is that what's much more powerful than finding ideal garments is finding ideal combinations of garments that work well under particular circumstances. So again, I've got merino, I've got a light fleece of some description, which is quite good if I'm being active, maybe just with a waterproof straight over the top. But then if I'm less active or if I'm stopped, I've got a Primaloft jacket, and Primaloft's a very good synthetic material, synthetic insulation material. So this is a mountain equipment, I think they call them the Fitzroy jacket. This is my older one that I still use in the woods in the winter and on trips. So the on my blog, the hiking trip that we did in the boreal forest, right on the cusp when it went from being wet and cold to snowing and cold, this was a jacket I had with me, and it's great in the mornings and it's great when it's cold and wet. This doesn't take up a lot of moisture. I've worn it on winter hiking trips in the UK as well. As I say, I've got a new one of these now which I preserve just for winter mountaineering and winter walking, but this is the old one which I take on trips with me still that I use in the woods. So I've got merino, I've got a light fleece, and then if I need it, I've got this on. Very good hood, it's not too heavy, it's got a very good solid zip on it as well. So there's the hood. Good zip, good solid chunky zip on it. I don't like these really fine zips that you get on some lightweight warm jackets, but it's a nice warm jacket. It fits me well. I've got quite broad shoulders, but it fits well. And then I wear that with another favourite of mine, but it's more a favourite in combination with this jacket. My Nerona Recon jacket. Now this is not the most recent model, because as with a lot of this durable kit, it lasts for flipping years. This is the second Mark II, I think, Nerona Recon jacket. The new one is lovely and it's lighter weight than this. It's a bit more stripped down, but this I like a lot because it's very durable, triple layer Gore-Tex. It keeps the rain out wonderfully well. The pockets on it are very good. It's got chest pockets here. It's got chest pockets here on both sides, so good for maps and compasses. So I find for sort of woodland activities where I'm moving around a lot, so if I'm hiking in the boreal, if I'm in even northern temperate in spring conditions or autumnal conditions where it's going to be wet and windy and this needs to be resilient, this is a great combination. You know, I can hunker down pretty much in this. I'm getting too warm in this at the moment, but you know, again, the hoods integrate really well. You know, all works well together, and that's what I'm saying. So I don't think I can't say you should get this one jacket, this one warm layer. Work to get things that work well together. So this is cold, damp, but relatively energetic stuff here, this combo. I've mentioned before pit zips. The Nerona Recon has armpit ventilation. This is a jacket that you can ventilate more readily than the Swazi tar. If I hike hard in a Swazi tar, I get too hot. I run quite hot anyway as a person. I sleep quite warm. I get quite warm when I start exercising, and I can cope with hot temperatures. by contrast, but I get hot if I've got too many layers on when I start exercising or start hiking up a hill with a big backpack on, and so I need to be able to ventilate, and I find a front zip jacket with pit zips is better for doing that than the smock type. But for standing around in the woods while I'm teaching, or for canoeing trips where I'm either going to be in a boat or around camp in the evenings, I really like the Swazi tar jacket. So that's why you'll see me in one or the other of those a lot of the time. What also works well in the woods, maybe when it's not quite so cold, because this again is a bit longer, I'll just step back and I'll speak up so the microphone still picks it up. This is not as long as the tar, but it's reasonably long. You know, those short alpine cut waterproofs, you're going to need to wear waterproof trousers with them. I'm more likely to wear waterproof trousers with these, but still I can get away often with not wearing waterproof trousers with these a lot of the time, unless the weather's really horrible. In the woods, of course, once you get into the hills, you know, you're going to get a lot wetter on the lower part of your body. You're more likely to be wearing waterproof trousers. The Recon trousers that come with these that are the same range are fantastic as well. So, and I wear those in the northern forest in the winter along with the smock, the Ventile smock. And I also use this, just while we're on the subject of this, I use this for ski touring in Norway in winter as well. It's very protective. I might only have a thin layer underneath because I'm working hard, but this protects me from the wind, protects me from snow. I can get the hood right up, I can put goggles on, very protective, but equally I can ventilate very well and regulate my temperature. And regulation is important so that you don't build up too much moisture in your clothing, and then when you stop, you get cold. So that and this are a favourite combination of mine. The Swazi back 40 smock, the Swazi back 40 fleece and the Swazi tar over the head smock, long smock, are another favourite combination. So for me, a lot of the time, it's about favourite combos. All right, another favourite combo. Okay, so this is a Buffalo System Special 6 shirt, and I've had this one for a long time, and they are supposed to be quite close fitting. I've got a merino layer underneath these, and the designer of these would probably not be very happy with that. They were originally designed to be worn right next to your skin, and I've done that. I've done some what was a memorable trip I did with pretty much just this as my main warm garment. I did a really good hiking trip in April one year in the Cairngorms. It's a 4 or 5 day hiking trip, and this was my main warm layer, and it worked extremely well. And I remember it particularly because we camped up around the back of Ben Macdui, and then came up onto Ben Macdui, and then walked from the summit of Macdui down across the Cairngorm plateau across to Cairngorm. And we'd had quite good weather to start off with on the trip, but then by the time we got up to camping near Loch Etchicon, it was quite a cold night. The next morning was bright and sunny again, but you could see there was an easterly wind which was quite chilly, and you could see the clouds coming in off the sea. And as we got up towards the top of Macdui, the clouds were thickening and the wind was getting stronger, partly because we were higher up, of course, but you could see people having started at the car park near the ski centre, coming up to the top and getting up onto the plateau as we were coming off. And we were dressed, a couple of us had these on, and we had big backpacks because we'd been out for 5 days, and people were looking at us like we were odd, you know, and they were scurrying across. Some of them had jeans on. I remember one guy had trainers, like just thin plimsolls, and a donkey jacket, and he was with his girlfriend, and she was slightly better dressed but really more town dress, and she had a scarf on. And we'd stopped to have lunch, and we got the gas stove out, and we had still only this on, keeping the wind off, I put a hat on, but you know, keeping the wind out, keeping the cool out, and keeping the warmth in. And they came back not long after that. You know, they passed us when we started our lunch on the way back, and we were just finishing our lunch because we cooked warm soup and, you know, dehydrated soup. We'd sort of cooked packet soup and had a nice, you know, some bread and some soup, and it was nice. Kind of hunkered down in some rocks. We were quite cozy, and they came sort of almost scurried off the mountain, and the guy with the donkey jacket on and the plimsolls on, he had his girlfriend's scarf sort of wrapped around his head to protect him, and they were just clearly very, very cold, and the wind and the cold had taken them by surprise because it was warmer and sunnier lower down, and then as they come up it got colder and windier. But this really made the weather pretty invariable for me. You know, it kept the wind off, it kept the warmth in, it wicks moisture away very quickly. And that time I had it right next to my skin, and it worked very, very well. It's got this sort of furry teddy fur-like lining on the inside. It's got quite tough Gore-Tex material on the outside. Some of them have thinner material. But what's also good, we talked about ventilation. Down the side here, the zips go both ways, so you can ventilate on the side as well. So it feels a bit weird sometimes when you're in the hills and you feel quite warm, and you open it and you get a breeze flowing through, and you get a breeze going across the bottom of your chest and across your belly, and that feels a bit odd because it's an unusual, compared to most garments, it's quite an unusual feeling, but it works very, very well. And these are garments I really, really like. I always carry one in my canoeing kit as well, in my ditch kit. This is I've got two of these tops, and even if I'm wearing one while I'm canoeing, I'll have the other one in my ditch kit. So I've got a spare one to put on, because as soon as it's just one garment, as soon as you can be wet, take off your wet clothing, put this on, you feel warm straight away. And it doesn't soak up a lot of moisture, and you can put it on over the top. Also underneath a garment, I like a Gore-Tex outer, even underneath another garment, because this is relatively, it's not waterproof, but it will repel some moisture, and you can reproof them a bit. When they come, they're naturally repellent, you know, i.e., you know, they come, you don't need to proof them when you first get them, but if you've washed them, you might need to reproof them a little bit. But it keeps moisture off, so they'll turn a shower away. And also, if you're getting a build-up of sweat on the inside of a waterproof that you put on over the top, it's not going to come back into the garment, and I like that as well. In the woods, though, these are not great near fire. This Gore-Tex material, while it's quite tough and quite water resistant, doesn't go well with sparks, and you'll burn holes in this if you get sparks on it. So what I like to do is wear it in combination with a single layer Ventile jacket. We talked about Ventile jackets a lot in previous episodes, and we can go back to that. I'll link in the show notes. But just a single layer Ventile over the top. This is the snow sled smock, which unfortunately is not made anymore, but other manufacturers make similar smocks to this. Just search on Ventile. On the Ventile website, they have a list of manufacturers who use their fabric. So this, with a Ventile over the top, it's still very breathable. The Ventile on its own, because it's single layer, if you get a lot of rain on this, it will come through. I've worn it in the past with a Swan Dry underneath in the woods. So again, merino base layer, Swan Dry Ranger shirt, and then this over the top. And that, in the woods, will pretty much keep any shower out, even really heavy, thundery showers. The wool and the Ventile together will stop the water coming through. You'll stay warm, even if a little bit damp. You're still warm and dry at your base layer. In the hills, I've tried using these in the hills, and again, I've significantly done some significant testing in the Cairngorms in fairly unpleasant spring and autumn weather, and I have to say it didn't really stand up as well as I would hope. I had a previous version of this that was a bit thicker, and it just went super stiff like cardboard. And I remember putting it on the second day when I got really rained on the first day, and it was almost stood up solid, because what happens with these fibers is the fibers in the cotton swell, and that helps stop more water coming into the garment, and that they're designed to do that. But the problem is it goes stiff, it's cold, and when you put it on, it feels like you put it on a cold, damp sort of suit of armour. I mean, it protected me well. I didn't die of hypothermia. I didn't even get cold, really, but it wasn't the most comfortable. And I did feel like if I'd had another day of rain like I had on the first day, on the second day, I'd have been struggling a little bit. So I've always since then just shied away from using them in the hills as much. I tend to prefer a good quality Gore-Tex mountain jacket in the hills these days, but with something underneath it like the Special 6, that works well in the hills if you want to use that. But again, I would probably still I would choose to wear a Gore-Tex jacket, but as a general purpose combination, this is good, and in the woods it's great. This is a nice top, it's breathable, this gives you a lot of resilience, and the cotton is tough, it's not bad near fires, it's much better than the Pertex. This is not particularly expensive as a garment, and neither is the Special 6 for the performance. I mean, you could basically just be wearing the Special 6 top and a Ventile smock over the top, and you'd be sorted in some really quite cold, wet weather in the woods. Compared to a lot of Gore-Tex jackets and a lot of thermal jackets, that's really quite a cheap combination. So I like this. This will vent right down, this will vent right down. The only downside is you can't really get at the side vents on this so easily, but frankly, if I'm that warm, I'm either going to take the Special 6 off and put the Ventile back on again, or if it's not raining so much, I'll just take the Ventile off and vent the Special 6. So that's another combo that I quite like, and I might have in more sort of summer months if I don't want one of the heavier waterproofs with me. This is a combo I know will keep me, you know, I can just wear this as a light windproof smock if I need to over whatever my base layer is, or over a light fleece, or I can chuck on the Special 6 and put this on over the top, and that keeps me you know, if we get some unseasonably heavy rain or something, that's going to keep me warm and dry. And again, in a woodland environment, these are all things that, you know, I'm using primarily in a woodland environment, although they will all work in the hills as well, some better than others. The best combination for the hills of the ones that I've showed you would be the mountain equipment Prima Loft and the Norröna jacket over a light fleece over a merino. My favorite for the canoe trips in wilderness areas in Canada is the merino if I need it, then a light fleece, then a back 40 if I need it, and then the Swazi or combinations thereof, and that's typically what I take when I'm doing a Canadian canoe trip. And we're often doing Canadian canoe trips at the back end of the season after the mosquitoes have started to die off, so end of August into September, and particularly in the boreal, you know, on the blood vein trip for example, it can be quite cold at night. You know, we can start getting frosts on that trip, so being able to keep warm in the mornings but still deal with relatively warm temperatures during the day, and then as it cools off quite rapidly at night, you need that flexibility of layering systems. And for those of you that are not so familiar with any of this, layering is the key. Having multiple layers that serve different purposes, whether it's multiple thermal layers and then a waterproof layer, or different types of thermal layer and a waterproof layer, or a garment that has multiple sort of different thermal layers like the one I've got on still, the Buffalo, that's got thermal and it's got this Pertex windproof which helps trap air as well, and then you've got something else on over the top of that. So yeah, that's what works for me. I'm sure there's lots of other combinations out there. I have specific things that I use in the hills for UK hill walking, whether it's summer hill walking, for winter hill walking. I have specific things that I use for that. So don't please the UK sort of outdoors community who are doing that a lot of the time, don't start saying, oh, it's too heavy and this, that and the other, and it won't work in the hills. I know that. I spend a lot of time in the woods in the UK, in Scandinavia and in North America, and these are the different combinations that work for me at different times of the year, but not including the boreal in winter. That's a very specific set of clothing that I take for that. But I've written articles about that in the past, and you can find those on my blog. But this is what I'm wearing a lot of the year in different woodland environments. When I'm doing stuff in the hills, I've got maybe lighter weight equipment for the summer, lighter weight layers, lighter weight clothing, because I'm lightweight backpacking, I'm going up steep hills, I want to really minimize weight, maximize performance. In the winter, again, it's a very particular environment in the UK hills in the winter. A range of different conditions you've got to contend with, from very cold and windy and snowy and icy through to sort of quite warm and wet. Particularly if you're, if you're winter walking on the west coast of Scotland, you might start off down in Glencoe, relatively warm and wet, and you'll end up being really quite cold and windy at the top of, something like Bidinam and everything in between, with quite a lot of energy in the meantime expended, giving out a lot of heat, a lot of moisture, different types of clothing again. But for me, the type of questions that I get asked and the type of work that I do a lot of the year, these are the combinations that I find that work really well for me, and hopefully you can take something from that as well, and that's useful for you. All right, so that brings me to the end of this showcase on some of the combos that I wear, and I'm getting bitten by midges here, and I will see you on another video soon. Take care. Cheers.